The insult slipped from the colonel's mouth with careless ease, sharp enough to slice through the crisp morning air on the parade ground. "Lost, sweetheart?" he asked, loud enough for several soldiers to hear. They laughed lightly, the uncertain laughter of people who weren't sure if they should. General Arya Stone did not flinch. She simply lifted her gaze, steady and unwavering, even as the colonel smirked at her uniform's missing insignia. He thought she was a clerk, or an assistant, or simply someone beneath his notice. He didn't know she outranked him by miles. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you re-watching from. I love knowing who is listening. For a moment, Arya let the silence linger between them, a silence filled with the low hum of distant helicopters and the murmuring of soldiers preparing for inspection. She breathed in slowly. She had spent 26 years climbing the ladder he believed she hadn't even stepped onto. Every medal, every scar, every long night in foreign deserts had led her here. Yet she felt no anger, only a deep, familiar ache. The ache of knowing that sometimes even your own uniform cannot shield you from being underestimated. Colonel Briggs squared his shoulders, mistaking her silence for intimidation. "If you're looking for the admin building, take a left. Try not to get lost again," he said, waving her off dismissively. The soldiers nearby shifted uneasily. Something in her posture, calm, composed, unmovable, didn't match his assumption. Arya studied him. She saw the arrogance, yes, but also the exhaustion behind his eyes. A man stretched thin, leader too used to barking orders and not used to being questioned. "You should know better," she thought, "but I suppose you'll learn." She thought she'd never see him again. She was wrong. That afternoon, the base gathered for a high-level briefing, one whispered about in the hallways, one that pulled even the most seasoned officers into murmured speculation. Briggs took a seat near the front, polished, ready to impress the incoming leadership he'd been told to show respect for. The room quieted. Bootsteps echoed down the aisle. When Arya walked to the podium, a hush fell so complete it felt like the air had frozen. Someone dropped a pen. Someone else whispered, "That's her," in a voice so faint it barely existed. Colonel Briggs went pale. She placed her binder on the podium with gentle precision, the same precision she'd used years ago to disarm an IED in Kandahar. Then she removed the plane cover from her shoulder. The rank beneath gleamed like a quiet sunrise. For silver stars, a full general, gasps rippled like a wave. Chairs creaked. Young lieutenant covered her mouth in shock. Briggs sank lower in his seat, his breath unsteady. Arya didn't look at him. Not yet. She began the briefing with calm authority, outlining the joint training exercises, the new logistics protocols, and the leadership restructuring. But every word carried weight, because the room now understood whose voice they had overlooked that morning. Her voice, her experience, her command. When the meeting ended, silence hovered again, the kind that follows revelation. Arya gathered her binder. She knew Briggs was behind her before he spoke. "General Stone," he said, stiff, formal voice straining. "May I have a word?" The room didn't empty. They were pretending to pack up, but really every soldier was listening. Arya turned to him, her expression unreadable. He swallowed hard. "About this morning," he began. The words tangled. He tried again. "I was out of line." Arya watched him, noting the discomfort, the shame. She didn't savor it. She'd met too many leaders who ruled through humiliation. She believed in something different. "Colonel Briggs," she said, keeping her tone even, "do you know what the hardest lesson in leadership is?" He blinked. "Ma'am?" "Humility," she said softly, knowing when to listen, knowing when to look again. "Knowing when your assumptions are the enemy." His throat bobbed. The entire room listened as if the fate of their own hearts depended on her next words. "I wasn't offended," she continued. "I was disappointed, not because you mocked me, because you mocked someone you assumed had less value." Briggs looked down. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry." Arya nodded, then learned from it. "That's all I ask." Before he could answer, alarms shrilled outside, sharp, pulsing, urgent. Soldiers spilled into the hallway. A training helicopter had gone down during a landing exercise, and the crash site was already billowing smoke across the far end of the field. Without hesitation, Arya moved, calm but fast, her strides purposeful. The soldiers followed her like a tide, Briggs among them, shaken but determined. Dust whipped across their faces as they reached the site. The scene was chaos. Flames licked the metal frame. Shouts cut through the air. Trapped crewmen pounded weakly on the cracked window. "Form up," Arya commanded, her voice rising above the roar. "We stabilize the left side. Briggs, get a suppression team on the rear. Move." What followed was choreography born of discipline. Hoses striking in unison, boots slamming into the dirt, soldiers moving with practiced precision. Arya reached the cockpit, gripping the door handle despite the heat searing her gloves. She shouted orders, coordinated angles, braced the extraction crew. As the soldiers pried the door open, she steadied the injured pilot, whispering reassurance while smoke burned her throat. Briggs arrived beside her, face streaked with sweat and grit. Together, they pulled the crewmen out. When the pilot finally gasped fresh air, the surrounding soldiers exploded into applause, exhausted, relieved, united. Arya stepped back, her chest rising and falling with controlled breaths. Briggs met her eyes, gratitude replacing arrogance. "Thank you," he said quietly. "Not as your superior, but as a soldier." Arya rested a hand briefly on his shoulder, a gesture not of rank, but of humanity. Because kindness doesn't vanish, it waits, and it finds its way back. Later, as the dust settled over the landing field, the wind carried the faint echo of that morning's insult, the quiet strength that answered it. A circle closed in the sunlight, the same sunlight under which she'd stood silent, underestimated, waiting for the truth to reveal itself.
Ow.
If this story moved you, share your thoughts below, and make sure you resubscribe to Whispered Words for more cinematic stories of courage, justice, and redemption. Your support keeps these stories alive.